Stuff Works Explained. If you are here for the first time, please consider subscribing to this channel. In today's video, we'll be comparing Kenya and Tanzania SGR standard gauge railways, where we know that Kenya and Tanzania are each investing in massive standard gauge railway SGR infrastructure to transform freight and passenger transport, regional connectivity, and logistics efficiency. However, despite similar strategic intentions, the two countries' projects are different, and this is sharply in terms of scope, design ambitions, costs, financing status, as well as implementation progress. We have two countries, two standard gauge railways, but in one region. Kenya and Tanzania have embarked on ambitious railway programs, and this to replace aging colonial networks, and they're also aiming at lowering freight cost and also repositioning themselves or their ports as regional gateways. A decade later into construction of this railway, the contrast is longer. I mean, it's not theoretical. It is measurable in kilometers which have been built, in terms of cost incurred, as well as in trains running, and how much scrutiny the numbers can withstand. Tanzania is constructing nearly twice as much railway at roughly the same total cost, with significant sections already operational. Kenya, by comparison, is spending far much more per kilometer, while its western extension remains stalled. This is not a political argument, it's a technical and financial one. It raises serious questions about design decisions, procurement choices, and whether the justification offered for Kenya's high cost truly stand up to scrutiny. Let's look at the Tanzania SGR, the lots, design, the ambition, as well as the continuous delivery. Tanzania SGR was conceived as a fully modern electrified railway delivered through clearly defined construction lots. This allowed different sections to move at different speeds without freezing the entire program. The core Dar es Salaam Mwanza corridor is structured as follows. We have lot 1 and lot 2, which is from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro and then to Tabora. The whole lot is 627 kilometers, starting with Dar es Salaam Morogoro, which is about 300 kilometers, and then Morogoro to Makutupora via Dodoma, which is 427 kilometers. This section is fully constructed. Testing has been done, and some sections between Dar es Salaam and Dodoma are operational for both freight and passenger services. Then we have lot 3, which is from Makutupora to Tabora, which is about 294 kilometers. This is under construction since April 2022, and it's being constructed by the same consortium that did lot 2 and lot 3, which is led by Yapi Makezi of Turkey. We have lot 4, which is from Tabora to Isaka. It's about 130 kilometers. Construction for this lot began in January 2023, and some substantial progress has been made, although it has been slower than other sections. Then we have the Isaka Mwanza, which is 249 kilometers. It's being built by different contractors, a consortium between two Chinese companies, CCECC and China Railway Construction Corporation. This project, or this section, is over 63% complete by early 2025, given the reports which have been given, the latest. This gives Tanzania verified 1,300 kilometers electrified spine to Lake Victoria. This, beyond the core line, Tanzania expanded westward and regionally. There is a loop that goes to Tabora, from Tabora to Kigoma, which is about 506 kilometers, linking the network to Lake Tanganyika. And then there is Uvinza Malagarasi, which is about 156 kilometers within Tanzania, part of Tanzania-Burundi corridor. And this is the section that goes to Msongati and then Gitega in Burundi. In total, Tanzania National SGR reaches about 1,962 kilometers, Tanzania alone, which is a scale unmatched in the region. This is approximately 2,000 kilometers. Let's look at the design choices and electrified uh, the design choices. One of the most important and often overlooked differences between the two railways is the design philosophy. Tanzania's SGR is electrified, designed for higher long-term speeds, lower operating cost over time, reduced dependence on imported diesel, better suitability for high-capacity freight corridors. Kenya's SGR, by contrast, is diesel-powered, with no electrification provision built into the initial phases. This matters for two reasons. First, electrified railway are typically more expensive to build upfront due to power systems, substations, and overhead equipment. Yet Tanzania, despite electrification, is still delivering at about half of Kenya's price cost per kilometer. Second, Kenya's lower design specification weakens argument that its higher costs are driven by superior technical standards. On paper, Tanzania Railway should cost more. In reality, it does not. Let's look at operations, speed, and reliability of these two lines. Train speed differ also. Kenya trains move at a maximum of 120 kilometers per hour for passenger and 80 kilometers per hour for freight. Tanzania trains are designed to be faster than Kenya's at 160 kilometers for passengers and 120 maximum for cargo. In practice, Kenya Mombasa Nairobi line has delivered consistent passenger services and freight haulage at speed often below the design maximum. Tanzania Dar es Salaam Dodoma section, which is now operational for both passengers and cargo, is making significant milestone in network maturity. However, Tanzania electrified system has faced operational challenges. In late 2024-2025, flooding along the parts of Central Corridor temporarily disrupted services, prompting public debate over construction quality. Some critics alleged some standard works. The Tanzania government and Tanzania Railway Corporation rejected these claims, stating that the disruptions were linked to extreme weather events, infrastructure integrity was not compromised, and mitigation and drainage improvements were underway. There has been isolated stalling incidents during testing of the electric multiple units, an uncommon issue in commissioning phase of the new electrified railway worldwide. Crucially, none of these incidents have resulted in project suspension, contract termination, or design of the system, and services on the Dodoma section have continued. Early operation challenges are not unusual in large rail systems. What matters is whether they derail the program, but so far they have not. It is important to note that Kenya has not reported any significant incident that can put quality into question. Let's now do comparison, or start by talking about the Kenya SGR, which can be described or can be summarized as a strong start but weak follow through. Kenya SGR began with speed and urgency. We have Mombasa Nairobi section, 472 kilometers, which is operational for both freight and passenger. Then we have phase 2A, which is Nairobi Naivasha or to Suswa, which is about 120 kilometers. It is operational for both passengers and freight. But west of Naivasha, momentum collapsed. Planned sections include one where Naivasha to Kisumu, which is 267 kilometers, or roughly there. And then we have Kisumu Malaba, which is about 135 kilometers. Together, over 400 kilometers that remain in planning. And financing discussions are ongoing with no active construction as of February 2026. Kenya's entire planned SGR network totals slightly over 1,000 kilometers, less than half of Tanzania's. The cost, where the comparison becomes unavoidable. In Kenya, total SGR cost about 10 to 11 billion US dollars. When you convert this into Kenya shillings or Tanzania shillings, for using the 130 shillings for dollar, this is approximately 1.3 to 1.43 trillion Kenya shillings, and this is equivalent to 26.7 to 28.67 trillion Tanzania shillings. And the length for this line is 1,000 kilometers. So on average, Kenya is constructing its railway using 10.4 to 11.4 million dollars per kilometer. This is equivalent to 1.352 to 1.482 billion Kenya shillings, or 27.1 to 29.71 billion Tanzanian shillings per kilometer. Tanzania, on its side, the total cost for SGR is 10 billion US dollars, which is equivalent to 1.3 trillion Kenya shillings, or Tanzania shillings 26.07 trillion. The length is about 2,000 kilometers for the sections that we have mentioned. On average, Tanzania is constructing its railway SGR at a cost of 5.1 million dollars per kilometer. This is equivalent to 663 million Kenya shillings, or equivalent to 13.3 billion Tanzania shillings. So in essence, we can say that Kenya is spending more than twice as much per kilometer, despite a shorter network, that electrified design, and slower expansion progress. So there's some reasons that have been given as to why Kenya's side is more expensive. And what we ask is, do this justification hold? Kenya commonly cites high land acquisition cost, dense settlement, challenging terrain. These factors are real, but they are not unique, and they are not sufficient to explain the cost gap of this magnitude. Land compensation does not double real cost. Terrain challenges exist in both countries. New alignments are common to both projects. What stands out instead is single contractor dominance in Kenya, loan-tied procurement, delays that inflate prices through interest and inflation, limited public breakdown unit of cost. Tanzania's approach has been phased routes, mixed contractors, and early mobilization. This has constrained escalation and preserved momentum. In conclusion, you can say that Tanzania is building a longer, electrified, operational railway at roughly the same total cost Kenya is spending on a shorter diesel-powered network whose expansion has stalled. Some of the Kenya's high costs are explainable, but not all of them, and not at this scale. When a country pays double per kilometer, the issue is no longer about engineering. It is governance, procurement, and financial discipline. Railways shape economies for generations, but debts shape budgets immediately. That is why these numbers matter, and that's why this comparison demands answers, not defensiveness. Because in infrastructure, intentions do not matter, outcomes do. So thank you for reaching this far. If this is your first time here, please consider subscribing to this channel. You can also hit the notification bell so that whenever I upload a new video, you are notified. Thank you.